have you ever heard something before that when you heard it, your life was not the same after that moment, right? Like you heard something for the very first time, or you heard some news and it changed your life forever. Has anyone ever had anything like that happen to them before? I'm not going to ask you to share. Just curious. Okay, great. For me, that's happened a ton of times in my life. For you, it's probably happened a ton of times in your life. I remember, I don't know if I really remember this, but I remember our kids hearing about this for the first time. But if any of you love Halloween, we like Halloween at this house. We go trick-or-treating. We're the Christians that do that. I'm sorry if that offends you, but here's why, all right? When our kids first found out about the concept of Halloween, it like life-altering to them, right? Like they all they hear is everyone we know is giving out free candy. And all we have to do is put a silly costume on and go ask for it, and they're going to give us candy. For a kid, that's life-altering news, right? And for me, I remember when the first time someone ever told me that the FedEx logo really has an arrow hidden inside of it. Shout out to John Marlin right here, our FedEx man. But if you've never seen the hidden arrow in the FedEx logo, once you see it, you will never be the same again. That's the only thing you can see when you see the logo. And I remember the first time someone showed me that, and every time I see a FedEx truck, I'm like amazed that they had that kind of creativity. I think it's really cool. I remember when I heard Stephanie say yes when I asked her to marry me. Against all odds, I found a wife, right? Woo! I remember whenever every time she's told me that she's pregnant. One of those times was very memorable because we weren't expecting to get pregnant, and she said an expletive in the bathroom, and because it ruined our vacation plans. We couldn't get on a cruise, and I remember, I'll never forget that one. And for the longest time, we thought that it was like, we didn't know what was causing the pregnancies. We thought it was just eye contact, but we finally nailed down what is causing it. And all that. But I remember her saying that for the first time. I remember when I was a senior in high school, right before my senior year of high school, I remember hearing the news that my best friend had passed away, which a lot of you were around for at that time. I'll never forget that. I remember exactly where I was when we felt like we heard God tell us to go plant a church back in our hometown. Heard that news. And our lives definitely has never been the same since then. And I don't know what kind of news you've heard. I don't know what kind of things you've heard that's changed your life. But chances are you have your own story and you have your own thing that you've heard. And it's ever since you heard that, it changed the course of your life. And so today, I want to talk to us about a person in the Bible who heard something. And because of something he heard, it changed not only his life forever, but the life of an entire nation and an entire country. And so that person's name is Nehemiah. Nehemiah has his own book of the Bible. It's in the Old Testament. And if you are kind of afraid of the Old Testament because it's weird or it has some strange stories in it, people's names are hard to pronounce, like all that kind of stuff, I would encourage you to read Nehemiah because it's written in first person. And it's written like a book. Like it feels like you're reading like a novel when you're reading it. And it's super, super awesome. It's super easy to read and understand. And I love, love, love this book. But Nehemiah's story is super inspiring. And I think it's a great, great picture of how this church is going to treat its calling. All right. So how Oasis Church is going to treat its calling to change this community, to help them know God, find freedom, discover their purpose, and make a difference. Nehemiah's story kind of mirrors a lot of what we're going to do. But before we can kind of get to that part, I want to give you a little background of how this story of Nehemiah kind of came about, and then we're going to dive into a couple things, and then we'll give some updates here in a second. So about 400 years before Jesus was born, this story kind of starts, and the nation of Israel was completely annihilated by the Babylonians. And the Babylonians were at that time, they were the world's strongest power, and they came into Israel and they literally annihilated the whole thing. They burned down every building. They burned down every business. They tore down the temple. they literally burned down the walls, the Bible said, and the city had no walls, and the city was left in ruins. And when that was done, the Babylonians deported all of the Jewish people back to the capital of Babylon. And that's where the people of Israel and the Jewish people stayed for many, 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 many years. All right. And the sad thing is that these people actually made their home in Babylon. And they've completely forgotten at this point that God had promised them a home. He had promised them a better life and all that kind of stuff. And so they settled in to Babylon. But after 70 years, so they stayed in captivity in the capital of Babylon for 70 years. And after 70 years, they were finally given the opportunity to go back to their true home. And at this point, there were 2 to 3 million Jewish people that were living in Babylon at the time. But when they were given this opportunity, only 2% of them, the Bible talks about that there were 50,000 people that decided to leave Babylon and go back to where God intended them to be and to go back exactly where they needed to be. And they had big plans. They were going to get back. They were going to rebuild the city. The city had been a ghost town for 70 years. And they were going to go back. They were going to rebuild the city. They were going to rebuild the walls. And everything was going to be great again. But next thing you know, another 100 years go by. And the city is still in ruins. The wall is not rebuilt. All the homes are still destroyed. The temple still destroyed. And the people were actually more broken after that 100 years, after they finally got to move back, than they were before. And it led the people of Israel to believe that this obstacle of rebuilding the home that God gave them was an obstacle that was too big to overcome. And so here comes this man, Nehemiah. Nehemiah, he actually still lived in Babylon at the time, and his family was not one of the ones that went back. He stayed in Babylon, and Nehemiah actually did very, very, very well for himself. The Bible talks about how Nehemiah was one of the king's right-hand men. He would do a lot of stuff for the king. He was actually the governor of the region where the kings of Babylon would go, and they would vacation in the summer. They would go to his spot, they would vacation. So he had a amazing cush job. The dude had it made, and he was living a great life. So one day Nehemiah's just living his life, man, minding his own business, and all of a sudden some of his friends come back from a trip, and they had just gone to the area where Jerusalem was and where the people had gone back years and years, 100 years ago. And these people get back, and Nehemiah says, "Hey, didn't you go, weren't you by Jerusalem?" And they were like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Tell me, man, how are these people doing? We haven't heard of anything about them in a long time." And these people gave the report to Nehemiah. And this is a moment in Nehemiah's life where he would answer that whenever he heard this news, it would change his life forever, just like we just talked about. And they told him that, man, not only was the city still in rubble, not only were the walls still broken down, but the people were in much worse shape. And the Bible talks about how Nehemiah heard that news, and he literally spent days weeping and mourning and praying to God that God would intervene. And one thing would lead to another, and Nehemiah would actually get his shot to go back to Jerusalem and begin to rebuild everything that the enemy had taken from the people of God. And so this is kind of where we pick up on the story, where I'm going to read from here in a second. But when they get there, Nehemiah gets to work. He starts rebuilding the wall. Things are going amazing. And I'm skipping over like a lot of stuff, but just for the sake of time, he starts rebuilding the wall. Things are going great. And there were two guys in particular that this ticked off big time. And these guys were actually religious leaders of the area, and they hated Nehemiah because of what he was actually doing. And the Bible says this. Here's what it says in Nehemiah chapter 6. It says, "Sanballat," that's one of the guys, "and Tobiah and the rest of our enemies." This is Nehemiah talking. This is all written in first person. It's awesome. "Sanballat, Tobiah, and the rest of our enemies found out that I had finished rebuilding the wall and that no gaps remained, though we had not yet set up the doors and the gates." So Sanballat and Geshem, one of the other enemies, sent a message asking me to meet them at one of the villages in the plain of Ono. But I realized that they were plotting to harm me. So I replied by sending them this message. And I want you all to listen to this because this is super important. So these bad guys, the enemies, they were trying to lure Nehemiah away from what God had called him to do so that they could capture him and so that they could kill him. And so Nehemiah discerns this. So they send a messenger. They try to trick him. They try to get him out there. And Nehemiah's like, something's not right here. And I can just imagine Nehemiah, he's probably on a ladder somewhere trying to rebuild this wall around Jerusalem. And these messengers come and they're like, hey, these really important people want to talk with you out here. And he discerns that this is not a good idea. And he looks at them and he says this. He says, I am engaged in a great work, so I can't come. I'm so focused on what God called me to do that nothing's going to distract me from it. I'm engaged in a good work and I'm not going to come. The Bible says that they sent that same message to him 4 times, and 4 more times Nehemiah would look at them and says, I'm doing a good work and I'm not getting down and I'm not coming to talk to you. And I just want to say, I love what we are getting to do together as a team. I love the team that God's put together. I love every single one of you. I love hearing that some of you are tithing for the first time. I love hearing some of you say that you are reading the Bible with your wife for the first time. I love that some of you are committed to this. You're here every time we do something. You show up, you help, and you get it done. I love, love, love that. But we are more like Nehemiah than you might think. And I believe God has given each of you, you wouldn't be sitting in this Zoom call right now if he didn't, but I believe God has given each of you a supernatural burden for this region. I believe that some of you are starting to see the problems in this area, in this region, that we begin to see. And I think that's awesome. And if you look, you'll see there's a lot of stuff that needs to be built. There's a lot of stuff that's been broken down that needs somebody to come in and to start getting their hands dirty and doing some work. And I love that God's picked you to do that. He's shown us that there's a huge problem with addiction, with depression, anxiety, shame, guilt, and the list, it goes on and on. But we get to be the ones who build something for people to come to so that they can find life, peace, blessing, security, and hope. And it's not going to be easy. I just want to let you know right now, this is not going to be without opposition. Just like Nehemiah had enemies that hated what he was doing, we have an enemy that hates what we're doing. And he's going to go to any length to see that we don't do what God has called us to do. Because here's the deal, man, before this point, our church has been vision, it's been a dream, it's been all of these things, but we haven't really done a lot until recently. But now we're starting to do. And when you start to do something that God calls you to do, the enemy is going to come, and he's going to attack, and he's going to try to stop you from doing that. The Bible tells us this in John 10. He says, the thief, the enemy, he only comes to steal, kill, and destroy. That's his only purpose. He's going to steal your hope away from you. He's going to kill your joy, and he's going to destroy your life. That's his only goal. And he sees us coming along, trying to start something new, trying to do something great. He's going to stop us in any way possible. He hates what we're doing, and he's going to ridicule us just like Nehemiah's enemies did. He's going to taunt us. He's going to try to trick us. And if we aren't careful, we're going to let the enemy trick us. And we have to have the same response to his tricks like Nehemiah had. We have to be so focused on the good work that we're doing. All of you are doing a great work. But we have to be so focused on the good work that we're doing that we can't be distracted by the tricks of the enemy. We have to look at the enemy when something comes up, and we have to go, I am doing a great work right now, and I'm not even going to entertain what you're saying. I'm doing a great work right now. I'm not even going to entertain what you're saying. You have to get used to saying that over and over and over again, because I'm telling you, the enemy's going to attack. I don't know how your family's been doing. My family's been getting attacked a ton. We're not even meeting together right now because we were around somebody that had coronavirus, and the enemy is trying to take us out. I believe that. And I have to look at him and go, I'm not going to entertain anything you're saying to me. I'm too busy doing something good. I'm too busy doing what God called me to do that I'm not going to pay attention to you. And so tonight, I'm going to look at three things really quick. I promise that was the beef of everything. This is going to be quick. I want to look at the three enemies that will try to distract us as Oasis Church from doing the good work. All right. And these aren't the only three, but these are the three that start with a C. All right. So here we go. The first enemy, I believe, is this. It's the enemy of contentment. The enemy of contentment. Here's the deal. Contentment is all about satisfaction. All of you, and me included, you have this desire to be fully satisfied, right? And here's the tricky part with being content and being satisfied is you will go to almost any length to find contentment, to find satisfaction. And once you have it, you'll do almost anything to keep it. I believe that once you're fully satisfied, man, you got the right job, you got the right house, you got the right car, you think that once you get to that point, man, I'm just going to be content when I get there. And some of us have ended up in that place where we're just content with the way that our life is. We're just content with the way Sumner County is. We're just content with where this coronavirus leaves us and all that. You're just content. And if we're not careful, contentment is going to be an enemy that's going to lure you away and distract you from the mission that God has for you. Here's the deal. We are a church, just like Nehemiah. Nehemiah wasn't satisfied with the condition of his people. When he heard that his people were still in the rubble, they were still broken down, their city had no hope, the people had no hope, he wasn't satisfied. Here's the deal. There's a bajillion churches in Sumner County, but I am not satisfied. Stephanie is not satisfied that there are 93,000 people that don't have a church. They don't have a hope. They don't have a future right now. That I'm not satisfied with that. And we're going to be a church that's not satisfied with that. We're not going to be content. And I think the second we become content is the second the enemy has distracted us. But we have to look at him and we have to go, I'm doing a good work and I'm not going to entertain this idea. We're not going to be content with the way things are. We're going to push ahead and we're going to have progress because that's where progress is found. The second enemy right here, first one's contentment. The second enemy is comfort. Man, we love to be comfortable. We hate being uncomfortable. And if you don't believe me, I could go around and ask all of you how you feel about having a mandatory mask thing going on right now in the middle of the summer. It's uncomfortable. That's just the fact of it, right? Or how about you don't drive to work tomorrow, you walk to work tomorrow like people used to have to do, right? Or how about I go to your house and I break your air conditioning and you sleep in the heat tonight, right? Like you like comfortability. You like, I know the Freemans had just had this happen. I was thinking of you when I wrote this.
I was a little too close to home.
I'm sorry. But you love your comfort, right? Like you love your spot on the couch. You love comfortability. And if contentment is all about satisfaction, then comfort is all about safety. Because when you're comfortable, you're in control. And you find safety in being in control of everything. But when we get too comfortable, we have to recognize it for what it is. What if Nehemiah would have stayed at his cush job at the vacation spot of the king, doing what he was doing? If he would have done that, the people of the whole nation of Israel wouldn't be back where they needed to be just in time for Jesus to be born. Think about that. If Nehemiah was so comfortable and he hadn't gotten out of his comfort zone, the people of Israel may have not ever gotten back, and Jesus may have not been born the time he was or where he was, but God had to take him out of his comfort zone so that God could do what he needed him to do. And here's the deal. We have to abandon our comfort zones. Man, and I'm not saying this to toot our own horn. I'm saying this because we've lived this. I'm telling you, man, in Florida, we had a great job. We had a great church family. Things were going great. And that was really comfortable for us. But I'm so glad that we stepped out of our comfort zone and we were obedient to what God called us to do, because I believe there's never been a better time to plant a church than right now in the middle of a global pandemic. It makes no sense on paper, but I'm telling you, there's never been a better time to plant a church. And whenever comfortability comes around, that is such an easy tool for the enemy to use to distract you. But you have to look at them in the eye and you have to say, I'm doing a good work right now. What I'm doing is too important for me to be comfortable. I'm doing a good work, and I'm not going to entertain this idea that you're bringing to me. So the first enemy is contentment. Second enemy is comfort. And the third enemy is conventional. Or sorry, convention, not conventional. That was a bad grammar. All right. So that was a bad grammar. Help me, Lord. That was terrible grammar. The last enemy that will distract us is convention. And this is a big one. We love things the way that they've always been. Change is really hard for most people. You love conventional things. You love for things to work just like they've always worked. Everybody loves this. And I like change, okay? But even still, Stephanie can tell you, I have a system of way things should be done. And when they're not done that way, I can lose it. You know what I mean? There were a lot of people who thought that the best way to travel was to get on a train, and they're sitting in a train, and in a few days you could go from New York City all the way to LA. The train was amazing. But I'm so glad that two brothers in North Carolina thought that there was another way to do something, that there was an unconventional way to travel. And there's a good chance that everybody listening to this phone call has never been on a train before, but you've been on an airplane before. Thank God for the Wright brothers. I'm all about it. You know what I mean? 15 years ago, I had a flip phone and it had a camera on it, and I could text people using T9 Word. Do y'all remember this? It was amazing. I could send a word message to somebody. The pictures, were like 3 pixels, but I could text people on my phone. Did you believe? And I could take a picture. It was amazing. But thank God, Steve Jobs came along and he invented and completely changed the game because he had an unconventional idea, right? Convention can destroy all innovation. And here's the deal. We wouldn't be on this phone call right now, this video phone call right now, if it wasn't for Steve Jobs inventing FaceTime. You know what I mean? Like, this is insane. And we're sitting here reaping the benefits of unconventional thinking. You see, the convention is the thief of innovation. And if you really like convention, you're going to hate Jesus. All right. So if you don't like unconventional thinking, you're not going to like Jesus, because Jesus was all about creating something new. That was his whole point of existence. He would come and he would change things forever so that he could ultimately change your life forever and make you new. And that's what the church is. It's unconventional. It's not always going to be the same. Our message is always going to be the same. But the way we share that message has to change. It has to be different. And if we're not careful, convention will be a tool that the enemy will use, and he'll make us get comfortable in it. We'll be content with what we have. And we have to look at him and we have to say, I'm doing a good work right now, and I'm not going to let you distract me from this good work. And so tonight, I told you we're going to give you some updates. I want to give you those updates in light of everything that we just talked about. So we've made a pretty big decision that I don't know if hardly anybody on this call knows. A few people do. But we've decided to change the way that we're going to launch. These are unprecedented times. There's so few churches starting right now that it's insane. I actually feel honored that God chose us to do this right now, because there's never been a better time to plant a church, I'm telling you. But before I tell you how we're going to change, how we're changing the launch of our church, I want to reassure you that our vision is the same. We want people to know God, find freedom, discover the purpose so they can make a difference. That's what we're going to do. That's never changed. That's not going to change, okay? Our heart has not changed at all. We still want to reach these 93,000 people, and we're not going to be satisfied until we do. The only thing that's changed is how we're going to launch our church. And so originally, we had planned on launching on September 20th at Madison Creek Elementary in person with full-blown kids ministry, with full-blown church services. We had a big vision for all that stuff, and we still have vision for all that stuff, by the way. But in light of coronavirus, we can meet at Madison Creek Elementary, but we're going to have to do it at a limited capacity. And that's not something that we want to do. And so we kind of went back to the drawing board and we said, all right, if this isn't going to be a viable option for us right now, what can we do in order to launch our church in an even stronger way than launching in person? And so we're still going to launch on September 20th, and we're still going to launch our church, but we're going to launch an online church on September 20th. All right. And so I'm super, super excited about this. I've probably never been more excited about how we're going to launch our church. And so here is what that means. We're still working out some of the details. All right. And once you can ask questions, we can probably hash out some of the details here. But I want you to kind of see what we're going to be doing a little bit. But here's what that means for all of you. All right. And this is kind of funny, but I've been saying this a lot, and it's funny, but it's also kind of serious at the same time, is we now have to turn this launch team into a film crew, basically. All right. So that's our primary job right now, is we have to learn how to record church in a way that's engaging for people, that people want to watch online and they want to interact with. Because here's what we know. We know that if we had an in-person launch, we might have 500 people on our first Sunday, and statistically that would taper off to 250 people probably the next week. And then we'd probably plateau off around 200. That's probably exactly what would happen to us based on statistics and all that. So, but with launching online, we have the potential to reach thousands of people that would never come to our church. That means thousands of people would hear the message of Jesus every single week that would never step foot in our church, but they would stop and watch a video for a few minutes, right? And that's what kind of church we want to create. And so we also want to do that for kids ministry. We'll get into that in a second. But we're going to need help with people running cameras. We're going to need help with people hosting our services live. We're going to need help with people to do lighting. Paolo, shout out to you, brother. We need people to help setting up audio. We need people to be our audience every week, which is going to be you guys. We're not going to invite guests, but you guys are going to sit and you're going to go to church, and it's just going to be on a different night of the week. And we got to do kids ministry the same way. And we have a lot to do, and we probably have more to do now than we ever did. But I'm super, super, super excited about it. We're going to plan on launching in person in January, but I want to be really clear with our verbiage right now. Okay. We're not launching a church in January. Okay. Just because we're able to meet in person. We're launching our church in September. That is the real launch of our church. We're just going to happen to do in-person services in January. I don't want you to think of this as like a fake start of our church now and a real start later. We're not ever going to think that way. We're not going to say that. This is our real launch of our church. And so I want you to think, like, what if the potential God has called us to is found in launching this way? Think about it. Our church can be seen, and the love of Christ and the love and message of Jesus Christ can be seen by thousands of people every week. I think that's amazing. And God called us to do this right now, and I think it's going to be super, super exciting. So we're not going to be comfortable. We're not going to be content with where we are, and we're going to be unconventional with our thinking. And I think this fits all of those things. Our son's losing his mind right now. So that's update number one. Update number two, and this is the last update, and then we'll get to questions after that. This has caused us to change how we're allocating all of our resources. Okay. So we had a plan to buy a bunch of gear and do all this stuff to meet in person, and that's all kind of changed, but we still want to have the resources available to us that when we need to buy that gear and the stuff we need to launch in person, that we have it in the bank, and we want to be sure we're stewarding our finances super well. We have a team, by the way, if you don't know this, that keeps us accountable to our finances. We met with them a couple nights ago, and they're amazing, and they help protect our church from, the enemy coming in and getting a hold of our finances and all that. And so we thought it's going to be a good idea for us to have a certain amount of cash on hand, so that when we launch in person, we have the resources available to us to buy the gear we need in order to do that in an excellent way. And so what we're doing right now is we're going to start like a little fundraising push. All right. So that if you don't know this, churches have to get out, they have to raise their funds in order to kind of start. It's almost like tech startup, if you're familiar with that world at all. And so we're doing something that we're calling 30K in 30 days. And that sounds insane, okay? But we want to raise $30,000 in 30 days. And it's going to start on August 1st, in like a week and a half, okay? So here's what that means. That doesn't mean that we're only relying on you guys to hit $30,000, okay? Because that's insane. Now, I would welcome it. If someone has an extra 30 laying around, I would welcome it all day long. But I'm not asking you guys to be the only ones to do this. This is something that Stephanie and I are going to be reaching out to churches. We're going to be reaching out to individuals that we know of that might want to support us. There's a lot of churches, I think, that could give us at least $1,000. I mean, that doesn't sound crazy to me. But if you're here and maybe you haven't, started tithing to the church, or maybe you want to start giving to the church, man, start now and help us get to that 30,000 in 30 days, because what that's going to do is that's going to help offset the cost that it's going to cost us to get the equipment needed to launch online. Okay. So this is online church is adding expenses. Okay. We're not really replacing much. We're just adding expenses, and we're still going to have to buy this gear once we meet in person. And so if you haven't started tithing yet, man, we did a talk on that a few weeks ago. If you have any questions about that, I would love to talk to you about it. But start giving, and you can give at Oasistn.church/give. And then you can set up a recurring gift, and your tithe can go out right whenever you get paid, and you don't ever have to think about it. But here's what I know is when you align your finances the way God has told you to do it, your life starts to kind of fall into place. I can tell you that. That's in the Bible from beginning to end. And when you do stuff God's way, God blesses you, and he just does. And so if you want to give to that, and we're asking people to give above their tithe for maybe a season, or maybe a one-time gift above their tithe, man, that's what we would call an offering. All right. So tithes are 10%, but your offering is above that. And man, if y'all want to give an offering, we would certainly accept that as well. Oasistn.church/give. And that will help us offset the costs of what it's going to take in order to launch online well, and then have enough resources to launch in person well whenever that time comes. So anyway, I know we just dropped a lot on you guys. All right. But I want to have some time to maybe, if you have any questions about how you're going to do this or whatever, I would love to answer any questions you might have. Or we would, and Stephanie would love to chime in. And yeah, so, hey, I'm excited we get to do this with you guys, but does anyone have any questions about any of that? If you do, Paolo, you raising your hand? Oh, you're not? Okay,
Oh,
sorry.
he was just...
Sorry.
I'm just resting my hand.
If you have a question, you make it obvious. Any questions? Wow.
How's children's ministry going to work? Like, are we going to record a video like a lot of the other churches right now are doing and like post it like an hour after service or an hour before? Or is it going to be like in person?
Yeah, no, it won't be in person.
Like, I know you said like you needed an audience, so I didn't know if we brought our kids, if you were going to like that, like if it was going to be on at the same time, like when we were sitting in the audience, if the children's ministry would be going on like while we were sitting there listening to you talk.
No,
Okay.
It's going to look different than that. It will be more. We're using a curriculum called Orange that is providing us free of cost our curriculum for the next till March of next year, which is amazing.
And it's like the best of the best.
It's super high quality. So Anna is going to be helping us figure out exactly what it's going to look like, but it's going to be a video. We'll have a host, and there'll be little worship songs and a teaching, and I'm really excited about it. Our kids love Orange curriculum.
And it'll be separate. So early childhood is what we're going to call it. That's birth through kindergarten. They're going to have their own teaching each week. And then 1st through 5th grade is going to have their own teaching each week. And so we're revamping our website completely. Yeah. We're creating a social media page for our kids ministry specifically. And so the idea would be that we would pre-record a host talking about the lesson. We would show the lesson. We would show worship. And then the host would wrap everything up, and the host being one of you guys, by the way. And then we would stream that, say at 9:00 on Sunday mornings. So it would be pre-recorded. We would have it edited. We would stream it at 9 on our Facebook page. And then at the end of that, our host would say, hey, stick around. We have service starting at 10 o'clock right here on this Facebook channel, on this YouTube channel. And then we would start Big Church at 10 o'clock on Sundays. And that would be pre-recorded as well on a night of the week that we haven't determined yet. And that's how that would work. But our idea would be this, is that we're revamping our website to where you get on our front page. It's not like this right now, but it's being worked on right now. That you get on our front page, and the only things you can do is watch that week's sermon and get resources from that week's sermon. You can watch kids ministry from early childhood or elementary, and then get resources about that. Because our goal is we want people, especially families with kids, is we want them to be able to watch church, and then we're going to ask our families to set one night a week where you have dinner together as a family, which is going to be easy if we're going back into quarantine again. And you're going to talk about what your kid learned at church that week. And we're going to
provide you questions and coloring sheets and craft ideas.
It's going to be easy.
Yeah.
You're going to literally get on our
We're throwing
website, look it up on your phone and say, so what did Nehemiah do to the wall? And, you know, and you're going to be able to talk about that with your kid, and maybe for the first time for a lot of our families.
Yeah.
So,
And I think one thing that the three of us have talked about that's so important is that we want families to feel like they're capable and able to do it. And so we're going to provide answers. So it's not like we give you these Bible questions that you think, oh, how do I answer that? We'll have it to where you can simplify it in your own way, or you could just use our answers, but that you get to learn alongside your kids, not just teach them and expect them to know it, but you're learning with them.
yeah, those questions are going to have the answers so that you can help guide that discussion.
And I missed it. Did we go into like the serving and like all of that? Okay.
And we're going to have, we're still looking for this. We might ask y'all for some help in this, but we want to have something we do consistently every single week. We're thinking right now that we want to provide free meals for people. We're just trying to find the best place to do that at right now. But we want to provide free meals as a church to people, and do that like every Tuesday night or every Wednesday night. And that way, that's something that you guys can be a part of doing, and something that we could invite our church people that are watching, our guests, to be a part of. Like, hey, Wednesday night, show up at this place. We're going to be handing out free meals to families all across Sumner County. And that'll help. We're buying a bajillion cameras, by the way, to help. Obviously, we're going to record all this stuff. And we're going to capture those and hopefully find some great stories of people that we're impacting. And that'll help drive, I think, generosity at our church. So people, when they're giving, they're not just giving to a online church, but they're giving to make actual change happen make a difference in the community. So we're planning on doing that as well. Any other questions right now?
I have a question.
Yes. Emily.
Is there going to be like an opportunity for like some kind of small group or something through this as well?
That start very soon. Like I'd say beginning of August, we're wanting to start groups. Maybe a little bit after mid-August. We're going to start
vacation next week.
Yeah,
so I'm thinking like maybe mid-August.
So mid-August, we're going to start that. We have a lot of like couples in here that are in their first year of marriage. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of couples our age. There's a lot of couples a little bit older than us. And I think we're going to naturally have some groups form. And it was our hope to maybe get together each group of like newly married people or people our age and at our house, and then empower you guys to do a group. But groups are going to be a huge part of our launch as well. It'll be something that we're going to host on Zoom. We have a membership to Zoom, and any of our group leaders can use this to do a meeting if things get shut down again. And we can get more in depth into groups probably in the next couple of weeks, and kind of give you some vision about how we do groups.
How about, I know this isn't everybody, but if some of you guys are interested in leading a group, like shoot us a text or like a private message on Slack or whatever, and let us know so that we can have an idea. Like we don't want to ask somebody to do something they're not comfortable with, or not realize that somebody really wants to do it and we didn't ask them.
So that's something that will start before the church starts. But when the church starts, we need people to step up and lead groups for people that
you don't know
might be joining after they watch something. But again, our groups, we're figuring that out because the way that we envision groups being is what we call them free market groups. That if you have some more nursing people that you interact with on a daily basis, you could get them together and do a group because you already see them every week, you know, or if you're a person that likes fishing and you go fishing with a group of guys consistently, it doesn't have to be, if you want to dive into the book of Revelation and find out when the rapture is going to happen, great, go ahead and do it. Or you can just do life together on a spiritual level. It doesn't have to be super crazy or super in depth, but we just want people doing life together.
Yeah.
In their life that already exists. We don't want to ask people to change their entire life to fit a group in. We're asking people to fit a group into their already existing life with the people that they already interact with on a daily basis.
But pandemic is just kind of, you know, that's just
changed everything. So we're doing some research on that currently, and
trying to figure out what
find the
works.
best way that works. And we have a huge network of churches that we're working with to figure that out, the details of how.
Yeah, but yes. So yeah, everything that you expect from church will be happening besides in-person Sunday mornings every single week.
It's literally, we are church now,
Well, yeah.
but it's the only thing we're not doing is meeting in person. Everything else is going to function the exact same. And we're just going to do the same exact thing with larger reach.
It's just funny. Like, I mean, in the last month, we've only gotten to meet together one time because
I know.
because
It's
of
insane.
stuff.
Any other questions?
I have a couple questions.
Lena,
Should be simple. So I know a lot of churches
just doomed this question. I'm nervous now.
a lot of churches will do like a live service and then it will turn into an archive and you can rewatch and all of that is made available. Have you guys thought about how, like, are you going to do it live like on Facebook and it be live on the website and turn into an archive, or will it just immediately post, or have you guys thought about how you want to do that?
Yeah, so we're going to be launching we're going to be doing, so we're pre-recording services, let's say on Tuesday nights, okay? And we'll record a service without worship. I'll talk about worship in a second. We're going to record the sermon and the content right there, and we might do it twice in one night to get different angles.
And it's going to be like, we're not talking a 45-minute sermon.
No,
sometimes.
I'm going to teach for 20 minutes.
Online is different. It just is.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk long. I'm going to do my absolute best to be 20 minutes or shorter because people just won't pay attention that long. And you trim the fat off, you know, I don't know how long I've talked tonight. It was probably way longer than 20 minutes, but this is a little different. But we want to be conscious of that. And so we're going to ask people to come in. We're actually looking at a space tomorrow, hopefully, where we're looking at renting to set up a studio, to like a recording studio, basically, across the hall from you, Emily and Andrew, actually.
Oh, is it the studio?
We're thinking about it. So it could be super convenient for you. So our idea would be to set up a recording studio, like a video studio, have the camera set up, have our chairs set up where you guys would sit, and ask people to come in, run a camera, or sit in the audience, and we would do a church service right then. We would record it. We'd then take all that footage, we would edit it, make it look super great.
And that's another thing. If you've ever been interested in video editing and you're like, oh, I'd kind of like to dabble in that, let us know.
Dabble away, baby.
Because we have people that can teach you. Like, we've had the offer of a church in Alabama saying, hey, they can come shadow me for a couple of days.
We'll pay for you to go
Yeah.
down to Alabama and learn.
Yeah, so if that's something that you're interested to, let us know. Like, if any of this, if you're like, oh, I've always wanted to know more about that, like,
Or if you're intimidated, don't be. If I can do it, you can do it.
yes.
So anyway, we're going to record it. We're going to edit it. And then on Sunday mornings, we're going to have an actual live host that's going to be really live, not pre-recorded. It's going to be really live. They're going to be interacting with people that are jumping in, and they're going to be hosting the service. Then they're going to kick it to worship, which I'm looking at doing 2 days of recording with some musicians and record like 15 or 20 worship songs all in a 2-day period, and then edit together the songs. And then we could basically make like set lists every week for how we want to do worship. So that live host would then go to some worship songs. And then out of the worship songs, the live host would come back. They would talk to the people a little bit, make announcements that need to be made. And then they would go to the message, and the message would be pre-recorded. And this is all being streamed live on Sunday morning on
It's good, so
Facebook and YouTube
yeah.
and our website.
Well, and so our website is a YouTube.
And it's embedded.
I don't know all the things,
Yeah.
but it's going to be embedded from YouTube so that it'll always be archived. It'll always be on YouTube.
Yeah.
It'll always be on our Facebook.
And so that week, the idea would be that we've had since Tuesday to edit for Sunday, but also during that week, we can already edit out parts, clips of the sermon, clips of the service that we want to post on Instagram and Facebook that week. And drive people to watching the video some more. We want people to watch the services, and that's how we want it to be. So we want everything to be super accessible, and the way it's going to be archived in our website is going to be very easy to find and very easy to navigate through. So it's not like if you miss Sunday at 10, the stream, you've missed church. Like, you
Right.
can do it anytime. It's actually a huge advantage
Yeah.
to having more reach. Did that answer your question?
It did.
Okay.
And then my only other question, which you kind of answered, and I'm assuming more answers will come in the coming weeks, but I just kind of wondered, like, on a weekly basis, what that timeline looks like. So are you hoping, like, on, say, Tuesday, and then that next Sunday, so it'll all happen in a week's time, so it'll kind of be, like, very current, like, not like you're not producing stuff and then putting it out, like, weeks later or something?
There might be cases of
Does that
that,
make sense?
especially at the beginning, because
Oh yeah, like we're not going to start recording September 14th for the 20th.
Well,
Like,
I have to work through some hiccups,
yes,
I'm sure.
we get the first few weeks
at
recorded.
the
in
beginning of
advance.
this, we're going to record several for the weeks ahead so that we can get the kinks worked out in our system of how we're going to actually conceptually come up with a sermon idea to finishing a message. It's edited and it's done, right? Like, there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to change how we're doing it. And so when we're hoping to get this gear, like, very soon, like in the next week or two, and start getting this gear in. And then if we can set up in the studio, if we end up getting the studio apartment, then we can start practicing and start recording some stuff. But I don't want to stay like that forever. I don't want to be weeks out, because if something happens in the world that we need to talk about, like, if you know me, I'm a flying by the seat of my pants type guy anyway. I want to change and talk about what needs to be talked about in an appropriate time frame. And so, for instance, when George Floyd got murdered, like, that was something that it doesn't matter what you have planned at that moment. You're going to stop and you're going to talk about that because that's important, and we're going to have the ability to also do that. But the goal would be to film on Tuesdays for the following Sunday's sermon. Eventually, that would be kind of our schedule. That's what we're thinking right now, at least. That could change after we talk about this when we go to bed and we're like, that's a dumb idea. Let's do Mondays. I don't know. But Tuesdays feels good to me right now. Any other questions? And kids ministry is going to operate very similarly to this. You're probably not going to record on Tuesdays, but
And
kids
we wouldn't need an
ministry.
audience for kids ministry.
Yeah, kids ministry is going to be, we could record the whole month of content in a day easily.
Yeah.
So we could get really ahead with kids, which that doesn't really change. You're not changing what you're teaching kids a lot anyway.
Right.
Any other questions, guys?
When we go, like, in person instead of online, will we still be at Madison Creek, or will we be at a different, because of all this going on?
That completely depends on what's going on. I would love to be at Madison Creek.
Yeah.
But we're also weighing other options that might not be as big. They might not be as expensive, because the reason why we wanted to launch online, another reason, is once we start in-person church, online church is still going to happen. It might look different. We're not going to be shooting stuff on Tuesdays most likely and all that, but we wanted to establish something that's going to continue when we launch in person. And if it is going to cost us, again, some resources to continue to do online church, we need to find an option that might be more affordable for our church. And I think that just depends on about a million different things, but I would love to be at Madison Creek.
Yeah.
And they would love to have us. Like,
Yeah.
they
They've never said no. It's just, it would be incredibly restricted. And we don't think it's a wise use of our money to spend tens of thousands of dollars to get everything set up, like tens of thousands
lots
of
of money,
dollars
yeah.
to get everything set up for in-person meetings. And we meet 2 times and then everything's shut down for the next 6 months. Like, we just don't think that's a wise use of our money right now in the climate that we're in.
We would be hosed. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, it would not be great. And thankfully, we have a team of people that's on our board of trustees that keeps us protected from that.
Mhm.
And even they'll disagree with me all the time, you know, because I'm a go-getter, and they're, you know, they can be conservative and make me not go crazy. And I love that about them. So they've been awesome, and they help keep us in check.
Yeah.
And that's something that we've, you know, part of being a leader is trying to anticipate what's around the corner. And this is the best way for us to anticipate what might be around the corner. And we want to handle y'all's finances.
Mhm.
Like, there's a story in the Bible of the widow that gave her tiny little mite, that gave everything she had. And we try to spend our money like a widow gave all that she had. A single mom gave all that she had to help our church grow. And we try to scrutinize everything. And so this board helps protect us to make sure that we don't. So it just makes sense. And honestly, like, God, we're very clear that God wants us to do this, and we're excited about doing it.
Yeah.
Now, does this excite you guys? Is this something that, like, you're like, okay, I can get behind this, right? Y'all feel good?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the idea.
Okay, cool. I think you're going to love it. It's going to be great.